Hey everyone, my name is Mr. Sokowski. I teach AP World and AP Euro. For this video, I'm going to be doing a quick crash course on AP World's version of feudalism in Europe. In your course, they love to compare feudalism in Europe to feudalism in Japan because there are two versions of feudalism, and I'm going to be doing a quick review of it. Again, if you like this video and you find it useful, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. And if you really like the video and appreciate it, I'd appreciate a subscribe for more video content that I'm going to be putting out for. Okay, so the age of feudalism in Europe starts with the rise of a manor economy. One thing you want to know about Europe at this time is that it's the fall of the Roman Empire. So a centralized government, meaning the emperor that technically is there, is not really the emperor that has the kind of strength to kind of call the place because the Roman Empire has fallen. Thus, it's a very loosely organized type of government going on. In Europe, because of all attacks from outside forces from Vikings, Muslims, and Magyars, basically led to the fall of the Roman Empire. Thus, it's a loosely organized, decentralized governance that's ruling in the age of feudalism. It's kind of like the king is technically there with the title, but you can no longer depend on the king. You can only depend on local people. So it's kind of like I got your back, you got my back, because the emperor, even though he's the emperor, technically can't get our back in case we are invaded by outside sources. So it's a way of survival through this period of time in Europe. Kings and emperors are too weak to maintain law over their subjects. So this is the idea of decentralized, meaning there is a governance, but it's not centered under the king that has its complete and total authority. The structure in feudalism is a loosely organized system. Lords were divided into local landholdings. They gave it to lesser lords called vassals, and then the vassals would give it off to their serfs in the idea of basically this feudal contract. Now, the idea that a lord would give off the land to a vassal, they did this in exchange of land for service, and this was known as a feudal contract. It's not really written down, and in the sense that the lord gave the land to the vassal, so the lord says, "I will pledge my allegiance to protect you, vassal, if you kind of take over and maintain my property and give me some actual whatever you produce extra. You give me some money on the side or some crops or something like that," and thus the vassal would have a place to live with their family that's protected by the lord, and the lord would have someone to maintain the land to produce and to production and so forth to maintain some sort of economic sustainability. That's basically this localized governance, right? You think of the federal government and the local government in the United States. That's kind of like the idea of only local government has a real power at this time because of the necessity of survival, right? People need to survive however they need to survive. So that's basically what would happen. Under the feudal contract, a vassal will later give the fief, get the fief, and the vassal will control it, any peasants or towns that are under it in this age of feudalism. So that's the idea of feudalism going forward. Society, aristocrats were the people that were at the top of society. They held the most power. This would be the idea of the nobles that were at the top. There were in the social order, there was the monarch, which was the top of the top. Under this aristocrat society, you would have lords, and those were the ones that had more maintaining power in this era and had the largest feasts going in this period of time. Okay, so that's a social structure that we're going through. And over time, it'll get complex because the way that these societies would interact with each other is that to keep one society or family going, you would have to intermarry with another society or another area, and then this kind of got all convoluted because who's got who's back, who's got this deal going on. It's not really centralized under one government or emperor going forward. Noble women during this time actually did have power. For instance, if people were off, if the men were off fighting or protecting their land of a lord, a noble woman would actually kind of take over, do services. There's even Eleanor of Aquitaine that actually took off and rode off to preserve her actual estate and protect her people. So this is something that's kind of important. That's a little bit differentiation between feudalism in Europe and feudalism in Japan, because in Japan, a woman would never be anywhere part of this type of kind of equality of governance, what's happening on the actual estate itself. Now, remember, they do this because it's a necessity of need for survival. During this Middle Ages, also there were things called knights, which were basically the the army or like the protector or the bodyguards of this era. A knight was a mounted warrior, usually came from noble birth, trained ever since then. A knight usually rode horses, had axes, lances, which were long poles to fight, swords, obviously, from knights' tales that you guys probably know. And they engaged in battles of tournaments to protect them, to prove their skill without killing each other. So it's kind of like we think of tournaments today, if you know about sports, to kind of get the best of the best. Technology and castles and defense. During this time, the lords' houses would become more fortified, and they got it so fortified to protect against outside invasions or threats that later become castles, stronger protections. The castles get outdated as time goes on with the advent of gunpowder and cannons, but at this time it's a highly needed thing to protect and fortify the lord's house. The economic system in feudalism was centered around manorialism. Manorialism is basically the manor economy. The manor is basically the center household of the lord on the estate. The manor is the heart of the medieval economy, so thus it's called manorialism, also the age of feudalism. And peasants on the manor were called serfs. Those are the people that were serfed and bound to the land. Lords and peasants were tied together through the mutual obligations, so it wasn't like I own you. It's kind of like we a symbiotic relationship with these two to survive in this loosely organized government that was going on. Peasants had to work several days a week farming the lord's lands. And on the bottom right here, you can see this is a depiction of the manor economy, the manor here. And it's kind of like its own bubble of self-sustaining town. You have water, you have crops to grow, you actually have the castle. This is the outside castle of protection, the moats to protect. They say there's alligators and sharks around there, but in reality, it was just to slow down the incoming troops to defend. There's a drawbridge to protect that. And down here is the social structure that you can see of Europe, which would have the king, nobles, knights, and peasants. This is a depiction of what would be in Japan, which would be the emperor, shogun, daimyo, samurai, Ronin, peasants, and anyone under the peasants here. So this is kind of like how these social structures kind of relate in the essence of the hierarchies. And remember, in the age of feudalism, even though technically there's a king or an emperor, reality, they don't have power to help you out at this time because it's such a chaotic time that only people can depend on people that are next to them. And that's the age of feudalism in a nutshell. Again, if you like the video, please like and subscribe. I really appreciate that. And then have a great day.